Welcome once again to A.O.S Academy's YouTube channel. We are going to be continuing today with our research series. If you have actually watched our first video, which was centered on the definition of research, we related the research to data science, the field of data science. So today we will be continuing with the field of data science, but talking about the characteristics of a good research in this series. Now, what exactly do you feel a good research must entail? What are the features and the attributes that you need to have in a research before we can say it is good? Today we'll be actually giving about 4 to 5 characteristics of a good research and examples from the field of data science in relation to the research project topics that you can actually center your upcoming research on. Now, the very first type of characteristics or the very first feature of a good research is that a good research must be centered on a research problem. In other words, you must begin your research on the basis of a problem that you have in mind, which you want to find a solution for. Let me give you a particular example in the field of data science. If I want to find out through research how data is structured in maybe the field of environmental science, and the kind of problem I have in mind is that I want to find out how are the locations in a map, how are they differentiated, how are they divided into boundaries. Let's take for instance the boundary of the U.S. and Canada, and I want to find out through the help of research what are the different boundaries or the different borders we have in between US, the United States of America, and Canada. And I want to find out what exactly differentiates the boundaries of US and Canada in relation to maybe US and other countries. Then what I would have to do is to have a problem in mind. My problem in mind may relate to finding out the boundaries between US and Canada and the landscape that actually defines and delineates these boundaries amongst all other boundaries of different countries. So that may be my research problem. That may be because I don't have a solution to it yet. I don't know the differences between the boundaries. I don't know if the boundaries have rocks that divide them, if it has roads that divide them, or waters that divide them. I am not clear with it. I don't know about it yet, but I have it in mind and I want to carry out a research to find out about them. Now, the second characteristics that a good research must have is that your research must bring about outcomes or findings that would develop or that will be developed to bring up generalizations, principles, and theories. In other words, your research must not just be something that will bring about a solution that cannot be generalized. Do you understand? Your research must bring about results, findings that all other people, all other researchers just like you can carry out and find about that same result. In our example of data science in relation to the environment or ecology, the field of data ecology, you'd see that when I was talking about the US territory or the US border in relation to the Canadian border, I said that when I want to find out about that problem, I need to find it out by collecting data, and as I'm collecting data, I need to now kind of bring about some generalizations, some results that I state that mere looking at the boundaries of US and Canada, after analyzing them, I found out that their boundaries are a combination of land boundaries, which were characterized by roads, and also sea boundaries that are characterized by rivers and lakes. Once I carry out that research successfully and I bring about my findings, another researcher should be able to also make use of my own data or make use of my own research problem and carry out that same research and find out the exact thing. In other words, it must bring about the same result. In a situation whereby my research cannot yield back the same result by another researcher, it shows that it is not a good research. Now, the third characteristics about a good research is that a good research must be systematic in nature. It must be empirical in nature. I think we talked about this in the definition of a research, the very first series we talked about in our research series for this channel. If you have not actually watched the definition of a research, you can click on the link above this video to watch it right now. Now, in this feature, what we are particular about is that a research must be carried out in form of different stages. In other words, one stage must lead to another stage must lead to the next, and the next until the final stage. When we're talking about the concept of systematic, it means that it must follow a sequence of processes. It must follow a sequence of stages and steps in order for another researcher to be able to carry out that same research I did and get the same result. I must be able to have penned down the processes I took in order to carry out that research, and also the methods and methodologies, you understand, that I used to achieve that research, so that the next researcher can reproduce that same research using the same methods and deriving the same outcome. The third characteristics of a good research is that the process by which you use in conducting research must not just be systematic, but it must be empirical. Empirical in the sense that we must make use of some data, some underlying data, like the data, for instance, that I talked about in US-Canadian border. Definitely, we don't have two states or two countries that are known as the US. We don't have two countries that are known as Canada. We have just one United States of America and just one Canada. In other words, the data I must use for them must be a data that I get from the country itself. You understand, the boundaries of those countries, and it must be a data that it is easily accessible, it is easily retrievable. I can get it just like all other researchers can get it. Likewise, the data that I'm using must not be exaggerated. I mustn't actually make use of a data that is not correct. I must make use of a data that is correct, that is verifiable by another researcher and usable by another researcher. Moving on, another very good characteristic of a research is that a research must make use of a research plan. In other words, when you are talking about a research plan, just like I said earlier, it must make use of a stringent amount of methods, a stringent amount of research methodologies, a stringent amount of research procedures. In other words, that means I must actually carry out my research in a way that my research is trackable. My research is something that can be followed by another person. My research is something that, since I have a plan at stake, I have a plan that I'm following, I have a plan that I'm using, another person can take up that plan that I used in carrying out that research and derive the same outcome. You see that the features that I'm talking about, the characteristics that I'm talking about, are still referring back to the same point. You understand? I'm still referring back to a similar point that I've talked about before. When your outcomes or your results must be must be correct, must be trackable, must be achievable by another researcher. Do you understand? Must be achievable is very, very important. Now, lastly, when we are talking about a very good research, a good research must have its outcomes and findings to contribute something new to the growth of knowledge in that field of study. If I am to carry out a research like the research that I talked about in relation with the boundaries of United States and Canada, it mustn't be a research that has been carried out by another person. Do you understand? In other words, there must be something new in my own research to be able to say that, yes, this is a proper and good research. This is a research that is worth actually reading about, a research that is worth actually carrying out, and a research that is worth knowing its outcome, its research, its finding. If someone else has carried out that research, then it is no longer needed to be carried out again, except if that person didn't carry out that research extensively, except if that research actually has some flaws in it that you seek to now perfect. But if not, if it is not going to contribute, you understand, and advance the frontiers of the knowledge of that particular field of study, then it is not a good research, and it cannot be considered as a research that would have any worth. You understand? Now, that being said, we are going to also continue this research series further, and the next series is going to be centered on the processes involved in a research project. If you would want to actually continue this research series with us, then we would beseech you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this video, and also hit the notification bell in order to get updates anytime we drop a content. Thank you very much, and I do hope to see you in the next series.